Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello, welcome. What a beautiful looking day. I think it looks better than it feels. A little humid out there, but it sure is pretty. Hi, it is the last Friday of the last week of the 8th month of the year 2013. We're in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we're looking at a Labor Day weekend coming up. So hope if you're traveling, you have safe travels and not crazy travels as traveling can be, and also that you just have a good time and don't eat too much. Okay, just you, just me, today. I kept, as you probably have, I kept reading about those fast food strikes that people working in fast food restaurants all over the country have been doing these one-day strikes, just walking off the job, and it's something that has been picking up momentum. They're doing it in New York City. They're doing it in L.A. They're doing it in the South, which is, like not happy union kind of territory. The fact is that they're doing it everywhere, and I kept wondering why they weren't doing it here. There really hasn't been anything much here, and why has been answered somewhat in the Post-Gazette today, I found it a very interesting answer. The answer essentially is UPMC. And what? So they're not walking out at McDonald's here because UPMC? Yeah, the reason being that what unions have been doing is targeting the largest employers of workers who do not make a living wage. And obviously, fast food workers fall into that category. So in most cities, that is a reasonable target if you want to spotlight how so many people are working and working hard and not able to even afford shelter and food, that they are not receiving a living wage. Well, it turns out that here, the unions will tell you that UPMC is the largest low-wage employer in the region. So, and you know that there have been concerted efforts to unionize some of their lowest paid workers. So the union here, especially the Service Employees Union, has been focusing on UPMC and not on the fast food workers. And what they say is the largest employer of low-wage workers then sets the bar for other employers, right? Well, heck, UPMC's only paying people $7.30. Oh, we don't have to pay any more than that. And so you go after the one who's setting the bar low. And I was sort of blown away by this. I find it incredible. It says here that half of the employees at UPMC earn less than $12 an hour. Half. Wow. $12 an hour is not a lot of money. And if you're a person with a family, let's say if you got a spouse and you have 2 kids or something, that would put you definitely in the federal definition of poverty. So here, the Service Employees International Union has been focused on getting UPMC organized, unionized, those low-wage workers in an attempt to pull their wages up. So that's why you're not seeing the fast food workers going out. And interestingly, yesterday, too, a report came out from a Harrisburg group called Keystone Research Center, and it reported that low-wage jobs, and they define that as jobs at $11 an hour and lower, that low-wage jobs make up 30% of all the jobs in the state of Pennsylvania. Now, I say all this because you cannot have a thriving economy when that is a fact. When that is a fact. You cannot. You cannot pretend that there is somehow equality of opportunity in a country in which the jobs that are being created pay substandard wages that result in people living precariously and in poverty. There's something so outrageous to me about employers doing what they do to people. And then they argue, well, if you force us to raise the wages, then we're going to have to get rid of some of these workers. They'll go from making $11 an hour to nothing. I think that's an empty threat in large part, because what will happen is if you force employers to come up with their wages, everyone's going to come up with their wages. And eventually, and yes, if it gets passed on to consumers, fine. McDonald's keeps saying, the cost of a Big Mac's going to go up if we have to pay these people more than $7 an hour. Well, I don't know about you, but that's okay with me as a consumer. How do you look an employee in the face and hand them a paycheck where there's nothing in it? Listen to this. Here's a young woman, works at a McDonald's here. She has worked at this McDonald's for 2 years, and she recently got a raise. Her raise was 35 cents an hour. And now she's making $7.65 an hour after 2 years. $7.65 an hour. She says, obviously, that is not nearly enough. She's trying to pay for college, and she's trying to pay bills. $7.65 an hour after 2 years of work. Shame. Shame, shame, shame. That's all I have to say. Beyond belief. And with that depressing intro, let me then go to my favorite letter of the day that was in the Post-Gazette. Shout out to Emily Stevick of Mount Lebanon. I ain't gonna read it all, but Emily said this. Why is everyone so glum? In recent days, I've spoken to many people who spontaneously begin to talk about how bad things are. I bet any one of us could have written that sentence, right? It's true. It is so true. I went to my hairdresser yesterday. He is somebody who is totally not interested in politics, avoids them. He said to me, "Oh, what do you think about Syria?" And I thought, what? He says, I can't get it out of my head. I'm so upset. What is going on with it? And here was this guy who's normally not concerned. And I'm sorry, but my advice to him was to turn away. There's nothing you personally can do about it. There's nothing good that's going to come of it. Don't trouble your head. Blah, blah, blah. Turn your back and go about your business. Which is not normally, I guess, what I would tend to say to people. Back to Emily. Why is everyone so glum? I've spoken to many people in recent days who spontaneously begin to talk about how bad things are. For the 1,000 years of recorded history, Emily writes, war and pestilence have been among us. Man's inhumanity to man is a theme in literature from past to present. We used to know about a fire in our town or a robbery. But now we know about fires and crimes throughout the world, and we see visuals that add intensity to the already highly dramatized news reports. And she says, so even if the federal deficit is falling, only 12% of Americans even realize that because they're too busy. And they let what she calls the fear-mongering shouts color their world dark. The good news is getting drowned out. And she goes on then to enunciate all the things. You know, she says, we live in a great country. We wake every morning. There's water in the pipes. There's electricity to power up all our devices. There are roads that we take to work, and they're not bombed out. They're paved, sort of, and passable. The weather's been lovely. Things look beautiful. We even have a bridge wrapped in colorful blankets. The pirates are doing good. Take a deep breath, she says, and be grateful for all of our blessings. Please stop and smell the daisies. I thought that was supposed to be roses. Daisies, says Emily. But, you know, I think we've also mentioned that fact, too, that we get so deluged with the bad stuff. And it does affects us, it infects us, and it dejects us. And we are not immune. And for those of us who I suspect a lot of you would fall into this category, tend to watch news and read news and imbibe news and are interested in news and by nature concerned, this isn't good for our psyches. And we should acknowledge that and take little breaks. That's what I did last week with the Happy Week. And I'm going to try to do that more and more and more and more and more and more and more, because really, what I told the hairdresser is right. Guess what? Worrying about Syria ain't going to help those people in Syria. My mother used to say that she would listen to my father while he was trying to sleep. And she said he had trouble sleeping because he because he was always lying there trying to solve the world's problems. He was. And he was a news junkie. And he was a good soul. And he'd lie awake worrying. To what end? To what end? So then I had this happy thought. Do you realize that the culture wars, the wars that brought to us, the horrors of the right-wing loons, in large part throughout recent history, the culture wars have essentially been won? Have you noticed that? And our side won? Have you noticed that? We have a caller. Hello. Hi, caller. Hello, caller. Why, how you doing, caller?
Call back.
No, don't call back. If you're not going to talk to me the first time, don't call back. So, have you noticed we won? We won. I'm thinking about how the right wing tried to win elections throughout recent history. I mean, recent, I'm saying 30, 40 years. They like to scare people. They're fearmongers. So they scared people about black people. And they scared people about gay people. And they scared people about drugs. Caller? Hello?
Hello, this is Clarence. Can you hear me this time?
Oh, you're suggesting that it was something on my end with my ears that prevented me from hearing you?
I couldn't hear you. I heard something say caller, and then that was it. And I'm going, hello, hello, hello.
Huh. It's
Yeah.
probably us.
Yeah,
Hi,
it could
Clarence.
be you, but it could be,
Hi.
my Wi-Fi.
Oh, yeah, well, that's true, too.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm going to actually get offline for my cell phone so I can talk.
Okay.
As you were talking about, people and, the worry and all this kind of good stuff, I have a quick story.
Okay.
It's quick. Okay. One Monday morning about 2 weeks ago, I had to take my uncle to a doctor's appointment. He wasn't allowed to drive. Backing out of my garage, about 8 guys, I hear, ho, 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 ho. They just blacktop the street right by, at the end of my driveway. So the guy says, you have to go to work or something. And, no, I'm just taking my uncle to the doctor's. He says, oh, but you can't come out for 2 hours. I said, well, I'll just walk down. I could take his car. He goes, oh, I'm sorry about that. I'm like, no problem. So I call my uncle and tell him I'm going to be a little bit late. And I walk through his house. It's probably about, half mile. I'm walking through Canonsburg. And I get to his house. Like I said, he wasn't allowed to drive, so his car was sitting there. Go to start it up, the battery's dead. Right? So I call my nephew. He comes and gives us a jump. And I get into the doctor's appointment on time.
Wow.
But I'm not done. He goes, hey, nephew, won't you take this car and drive around, charge up that battery? I'm like, yes, sir. So I come out. They're trying to figure out where I'm going to go. I turned down this place called McDowell Lane. They've been doing some work back there, new housing and all this kind of stuff. I'm going to go check it out. Go about a quarter mile in. Lights come on behind me. So I pull over. I pull over, and, the driver's license, all that kind of good stuff. And he comes back. He basically, I told him my little story about the driveway and my uncle's car not starting. Basically told him it wasn't my car. I was going 45 and a 25. So I'm not used to the speed. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So, and it's a street that I really haven't driven on. So he lets me go with a written warning. I go back to the doctor's office and, wait for my uncle when I get a phone call from a friend of mine. And I tell her the story, and she goes, oh, you're having such a bad day. And I went, no, I'm not. She said, what do you mean? I said, I came out, I said, I walked to my uncle's house. I got his car started. I got him to the doctor's on time, and I didn't get the ticket. Where's the bad day?
Oh, God bless you. God bless you. Isn't that it? That is.
But that's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
There it is.
Every time I like telling that story because people say, oh, that was a terrible day. Just so I can hit them with that punchline. Where's the badness at? What happened that was bad in that whole scenario?
Nothing.
Nothing went
Nothing
wrong.
was bad. All the exchanges you had with other human beings were helpful, and nothing terrible happened, and
No.
people helped people, and gee whiz. But
Exactly.
You're right. The vast majority of us would characterize that as a horrible, no good, beyond belief. You cannot imagine what happened to me morning.
Even my uncle at the end of the thing, he said, you can take the car, nephew, if you want to drive home. And I went, I appreciate that, Uncle Clarence, but I'm going to have to drive it back here and then walk home anyway. I said, I'll just walk home. I said, I'll walk a little slower than I did coming down here, but, it's fine. He was like feeling bad for me. I was like, oh, Clarence, nothing bad happened.
So does he really call you nephew?
Yeah, I do to my nephews.
You do
I
too?
do to my nephews now. Well, because I imitate him when I do it. It's like, hey, nephews.
Are you named after him in some
Oh,
way?
yeah. I'm sitting there telling the story like I'm telling it to some, because most people know my Uncle Clarence. He's like a retired cop in Canonsburg.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I am named after him.
Okay.
Funny thing is, he has a son named after him, too. So there's three of us.
Oh, wow. So if you're...
I was born first, though. My mother named me after her brother. Then, of course, he named his son after him.
So if somebody shouts out Clarence at a family dinner, there's a lot of people who are going to reply.
There's Clarence. If somebody his age, because most people call him Uncle Clarence because he's older. But if somebody his age is around, they say Clarence, we know it's him. If it's Clarence C, that's me. If it's baby Clarence, although he's 45, that's him. Or little Clarence.
Little Clarence.
But, that's just like a funny, yeah.
Well, that is the greatest story. It's like oh, God. If it weren't, I'd like to embroider it on a pillow and put, and give it as a gift to some sourpuss.
Yeah, and that's it. What is it? Life gives you lemon, make a lemonade kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I didn't. Somebody just handed me some lemonade. There was no lemons in there. But I just try to point that out to people. It's like, hey, you're not having a bad day.
Oh, you are. God bless you.
But especially people like I like get on Facebook in the morning. Oh, this is going to be such a terrible day, huh? You already read it. You already wrote it down. Now you're going to start looking for things. Or I hope this day gets better.
Wow.
Yeah, you see it all the time.
And that's why you're going to live a long, long life. You laugh a lot, you smile, you see things in that positive. You look at the positive.
And that's like another one of my little, I don't know what my dog is barking. Shut up, Rabbit. My dog's name is Rabbit.
You can't name a dog Rabbit, especially a dog that's a big dog.
They're huge. I have two of them. They can walk up to the kitchen table and put their heads on.
Yeah, sure, I can tell because that's a big bark.
And that's the small one. Rabbit's the small one. Bunny's the big one. Yes, the dogs are named Bunny and Rabbit.
Yeah.
So I can go out and yell, Bunny, Rabbit, come here. And that's exactly why it's that way. Although Bunny had her name first,
Yes.
I just named Rabbit because her name was Bunny.
Good heavens.
Right.
I've forgotten the dog that I had that you ended up with.
That was Drew.
Drew.
Mm-hmm. I had actually got...
Clarence took a dog off of me who I didn't think was melding well into my household with a young boy in it. And so we made the transfer and got into big trouble with the
Animal Friends, wasn't it?
With the shelter. Yeah, I forget which one.
Yeah.
Because I guess you're technically, if you adopt the animal, if it's not going well, you're supposed to return it. And I didn't want to return him. I knew I'd found the best home in you.
Yeah, you know what? That was well, Bunny's close to Drew.
Okay.
Rabbit's not even close. Rabbit's a little bit more active and harder to train and keep in line.
Yeah.
Bunny's I used to be able to walk Drew without a leash.
He was a wonderful dog, wasn't he? God, I know.
As a matter of fact, I got Bunny. I took her out of a shelter. I didn't want to get another dog, but Drew was getting old until he passed.
Yeah.
But he had like a month with Bunny. He was a little bit more spry when I brought her in here, but he didn't like.
Well, there's still something bothering them dogs. Well, listen, Clarence, God bless you. I've said that twice before. I'll say it again and again. And there's no way you haven't made everybody who's listening to this think. No way. It's a wonderful gift you've given us all. Thank you.
Well, don't thank me. Thank my mother.
All right.
All right.
I'll thank your mom.
All
okay.
Right.
Bye. Wow. Okay. So we should all resolve to look at life a little more like Clarence and his mom, his late great mom. Hello, caller.
Hi.
Hi.
This is Susan from Hempfield.
Hi, Susan.
You were talking about having a bad day.
Yeah.
It just reminded me, my daughter just graduated from Carnegie Mellon this past spring.
Oh, congratulations.
And her speaker is, I forget the guy's last name, Aaron, the guy that got his arm stuck.
and sawed his own arm off.
Exactly. Well, he had 3 pieces of advice. One was, always carry a sharp knife. Yeah.
Okay.
Tell people where you're going.
Yes.
Don't cancel your health insurance.
Wow.
And
wow.
he left with a parting thought. Any day you don't have to drink your own urine is a good day.
Oh, gosh. There it is, though. There it is again. I mean, come on, guys. God, what a nation of whiners we've become. Wow, that would have been a very inspirational. That's who CMU had as their speaker. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Wow.
He threatened to disrobe, but when he did, he had on a kilt underneath.
Jeez. I saw a guy walking in a kilt on Forbes Avenue in Squirrel Hill 3 days ago.
That's the mayor. Let's not talk
Okay. He looked like a local nutcase. Okay. Jess apparently knows him. I thought maybe he was a refugee from CMU's graduation, but apparently not. Hey, thank you for that call, and thanks for that wonderful story.
Okay, well, I know you have to go to commercial, but I wanted to leave a parting thought.
Oh, gosh, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Geez, you guys are onto my schedule even. She's right. I have to go to a commercial. Okay, we'll do it.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Come to Little's for all of your back-to-school needs. Little's has everything for all ages to stay in style for this upcoming school season. Check out the large selection from Doc Marten, Steve Madden, UGG, Clark's, Lely Kelly, New Balance, and much, much more. Don't forget to come visit this season's colorful handbag selection as well. Little Shoes, Pittsburgh's largest family shoe store, 5850 Forbes Avenue in Squirrel Hill.
This week's Pittsburgh City Paper is available now. Pick up one today for the special back-to-school supplement. Plus, Mumford & Sons, Dave Chappelle, Fungus, and News of the Weird. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone with GPS-enabled listings at citypapermobile.com.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
All righty, we're back. Thank you for those wonderful stories. And I guess setting them off would have been that nice lady from Mount Lebanon who wrote that letter to the paper. But I had wanted to point out that, we've won the culture wars in large part. And in case you don't realize that, I give you 3 stories. I think they're 3. Yeah. 3 stories from today's paper. They're all sort of, they're not news stories, essentially. They're here. The first story is about the Internal Revenue Service. announcing yesterday that if you are a gay couple and you are married, and you married, even if you live in Pittsburgh, PA, but you traveled to a state where marriages are legal and you got married there, and you came back here to live, that as far as the feds are concerned, you are legally married. And so you can and will be recognized for federal tax purposes as a married couple. So, okay, I'm just gonna. There can be more to say about that, but I guess I'll just stop. So it doesn't matter whether the backward state you may live in does not recognize your marriage. The United States recognizes your marriages for tax purposes. And in fact, you might find out that being married means you're going to pay more. At any rate, okay, so there you have it. IRS says, doesn't matter if Pennsylvania doesn't recognize your marriage, we do. Here's the other one. This coming from the Justice Department yesterday. The Justice Department of the United States has informed the states' governments that it will not bother them. It will not sue. It will not, knock down doors with gun-toting SWAT teams of legalized marijuana dispensaries. It will not bother the 20 states that have allowed for marijuana's use medically. It will not bother the 2 states that have now allowed marijuana to be used recreationally. And quite clearly, this then is an important step on the way toward ending prohibition of marijuana. And the Los Angeles Times picks up on that and says that with that announcement yesterday that the feds would not enforce, essentially that the feds will not enforce their own laws. That they will defer to the states. If I know our law says this is illegal, but if your voters say it's okay, we're not going to bother you. Well, I'll tell you, the result of that will be that more and more states will legalize marijuana, with the threat of the feds stormtrooping in on them gone. Of course, a new administration of maybe, Republican types would change that. But since the way the world is going, the Democratic Party is going to own the White House, is going to win national elections, that this is the way it's going. So wherever the federal government can move things in a progressive direction, it will do so. So you've got, and third, I have another one. A federal appeals court yesterday said that the state of California's law that bans gay to straight therapy is totally constitutional. It was a unanimous opinion. Apparently, there had been an effort to suggest that it was not. And that is the first law in the nation banning that psychological mistreatment that attempted to make gays straight. Okay. Stop and think. Try to just think back 10 years. So it's 2003. Try to imagine in 2003, just 10 years ago, that all of these things that I just said to you would be true. If I said in 2003 to you, You know, the feds will say that if you're gay and you're married, they're cool with that, and you better file as a couple. And even if your state doesn't recognize it, that you're still married. And if I were to have said that the feds have said, okay, we're not going to enforce the marijuana laws. If, you states want to let people smoke openly, okay, we'll look the other way. And stop and think of these sort of remarkable changes. And they're not going away. They just keep rolling on. The country, in many respects, has become more and more progressive. This, you can bet your buttons, is the reason for the seeming lunacy on the right. They know they're losing. They know they're losing, and they're freaking out. They are literally coming undone. So the good news is that when we look with concern, as I often do, at the actions and the verbiage of the Republican Party and the right wing of well, that seems a redundancy, the real right wing of the Republican Party, I have to remind myself that they're freaking out, that they're losing it, because, in fact, they are losing it. And for many of them, I guess the thing they focused on, to symbolize all of a sudden this impotence they feel, is that there's this cool black man as the president. And so this crazy sort of, anti-Obama stuff that won't go away is simply the manifestation of the terror that regressive forces in the country feel because they've lost. They've lost. And speaking again of how much they lost, I couldn't help but notice that after the march in Washington on last Saturday, and also the events of Wednesday, commemorating Martin Luther King's extraordinary speech and that extraordinary march 50 years prior. On the right, you could read, and I'm sure hear, although I didn't assault my ears with it, the Republicans squawking about the fact that it was a partisan affair, that no Republican spoke, that it was just a Democratic rally, I believe the Drudge Report said. It was a Democratic rally. And I think that, what's his name? Who's the pompous loudmouth? O'Reilly. That O'Reilly also made a big deal about no Republicans. Oops. It turns out that the people who had organized these affairs, especially Wednesdays, had tried mightily to get Republicans to speak and Republicans to come. John Boehner was asked to speak. Eric Cantor was asked to speak. They did not. They declined. Neither living Republican president was there, although, as you know, Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton did join President Obama there. This is really stupid. This is stupid. And as Julian Bond was quoted as saying, this isn't a wise choice by Republicans. How in the name, this is it, it's why they've lost. How do they expect to ever win if they will not even acknowledge these signature events in our nation's history? And the reason they're uncomfortable doing it is because, in general, they have never been comfortable with black people's ascendancy. As a matter of fact, black people have been one of their scapegoats, one of their wedge issues, one of their scary demographics that they use to whip up their base. Willie Horton, anybody? The Southern Strategy, anybody? And so you can sort of understand how Boehner, Cantor, or any of them just can't even conceive of themselves standing in front of that whole group of black people, and they wouldn't know what to say. Even the silver-tongued orators among them wouldn't quite know what to say. Did you see the picture that was taken of the crowd that gathered at the Sheraton Station Square the other night when Jim DeMint and Ted Cruz and the anti-Obama crowd came to town to slander the healthcare reform? Did you see the picture of the devotees at the Sheraton? I made a point of really looking at this one picture that was in the PG, because I wanted to see the faces of who are these people. Well, you can damn well betcha they're white. And since the demographers tell us that this country will not be majority white really very soon, the Republican Party, as I said, if they're not aware of it now, they're finished. They're done. And that they should know they're finished, they're done, and they still, with maybe a little teeny window to save themselves, like appearing at this 50th anniversary commemoration of an American so great that his statue is standing there on the National Mall. But they can't show their faces. So if it looked like a Democratic rally, it was not because the people in charge did not try mightily to get a more inclusive crowd on that podium. Jeez. Republican Party, I know they're still strong in many neighborhoods and in many states, but nationally, they're done. Nationally, in terms of the presidency, stick a fork in them. We'll take a break.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on gift cards from your favorite local restaurants, bars, museums, attractions, and shows. This week, 50% off tickets to the Pittsburgh Irish Festival. Supplies are limited. bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains. bergbargains.com.
All right, I've gone through all the tracks. Just move through the beats. Do your thing.
All right, everyone, let's hear it for West High's own Brooke Turner, a.k.a. DJ Hook.
Scratching at my first school dance takes confidence. So we're getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
Visit knowhowtogo.org to learn what you should be doing right now to prepare for college. Start taking the steps at knowhowtogo.org. Brought to you by the American Council on Education, Lumina Foundation, and the Ad Council.
Les Ludwig, your independent, self-financed, clean candidate for mayor of Pittsburgh. You've heard the saying, same old. If we don't change what we're doing, we can only expect the same results. Let's look at what the Democratic Party leadership of your lifetime is asking you to do on Election Day. They want you to forget that they and Ravenstall have not lived up to minority contracts and the jobs involved in it. If government promises work and jobs and wants to leave it for the next candidate, will it ever get done? How can we trust Peduto and especially the leadership when they continue to act this way? Are they hiding something worse than Harper's misdeeds? Vote November 5th and remember, same old. Embrace change and work willingly with it. Think outside the party's box. Make Les Ludwig your mayor and join his march to clean government and keeping promises.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
All righty, NP writes in regard to minimum wage and standards of, where the bar should be set, and how in the Pittsburgh area UPMC sets the bar for low wage workers, and they have set it obscenely low. NP writes, it seems to me that if you give corporate executives a substantial raise, they will just invest that extra money. Whereas if you give a raise to minimum wage workers, they spend that money. You bet they do. They spend that money and boost the economy. Fast food workers will spend more at places like Walmart, and Walmart workers will more likely spend more at fast food places. How come you have to relearn things that we were taught over 100 years ago? I mean, that son of a bitch Henry Ford. He was a son of a bitch, but he was a smart cookie in so many ways. I mean, he comes up with the assembly line, a faster means of production. He realizes that it doesn't make any sense to pay his workers a low wage so low that they cannot afford to buy the product that they are creating on that assembly line. He realizes that. He realizes how the economy works. And he wants to pay his workers enough so that they can buy the products. Because it doesn't make any sense to make a product and not have people able to buy it. So if you're paying your people slave wages, at some point, if you keep depressing those wages down, who the hell is going to be left to buy this crap? Excuse me, I didn't mean to scream. But there it is. Okie doke. I have this that I think is an interesting little piece. More than a quarter of all adult Americans now live alone. This is as big as that number's ever been. 27% of the population lives alone. So when you define what a household is, a household in this day and age, for 27% of those households consists of one person. Now, 40 years ago, that number was 17%. Now it's 27% and appears to be growing. And I'm sure it will continue to grow. And that has, I mean, there's a million factors, and I'm sure you're as smart as any that can come up with what are the factors that are doing that. But here's the thing that I find interesting. That even while American households have been growing smaller in that 30, 40 years, smaller and smaller and smaller, American houses grew bigger and bigger and bigger. How much sense does that make? I have mentioned before that I'm often struck when I go back to my hometown and drive around the neighborhood I grew up in, how tiny all the houses look. They look so small. They didn't seem tiny, but they're tiny by Pittsburgh standards. I got to tell you, they're tiny. They're like these little they didn't seem little. They had everything a house needed. There was a living room, and there was a kitchen, and there were bedrooms. And people raised families in these little houses. Most people would look at these little houses today and say, oh my God, look at that tiny little house. But that was a normal house. And somehow we've been building these bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, even as the number of people living in the houses has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense in a here. It doesn't, but we have been drawn into this bigger is better, big is better status, consciousness, and also the way our economy runs, bigger is always better because a bigger house means what? You've got to buy lots of stuff to fill it. And so imagine if we all decided to go back to living in those little houses. That's the right size. First of all, it's the right size if you want to conserve energy. It's also the right size if you don't want to go rattling around from room to room and you don't want to clean that big place or care for it or furnish it. There's so many more wonderful things for our money. Why work yourself to the bone so that you can furnish a house that you can't ever enjoy because you're too busy running around? And I was thinking that these houses, these little houses that I see, this was from that period where, I guess, there was still, those were middle class houses. People didn't want as much. And now our wants have turned to needs, and it's all pushed on us constantly, right, by media and by just human nature not wanting to fall behind. But it's nuts. It's clearly stark raving mad. We still are... Caller, go ahead, please.
Hello, Lynn.
Hi.
Hey, Lynn, have you ever been to the... I've never been to this before in Pittsburgh, but have you ever been to the Frank Lloyd Wright house in Fallingwater?
Yes, yes.
Oh, you have been there?
Yes, I have.
I went to the one out in Arizona, and
what were you?
A tour about it.
Yeah?
And I was totally blown away by the gentleman. If you ever learned about the philosophy of Frank Lloyd Wright, you would be totally amazed how brilliant he was.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't just an architect, he was a philosopher. And he tried to develop a city, but he kind of reversed the way the city should be run.
Mm-hmm.
He said we should be coming, instead of heading toward the city, we should be heading away from the cities. And the way he designed some areas, I can't think where he was trying to design some tracts where people would live, where his idea was, it's called organic architecture, where the architecture would kind of blend in with the environment.
Right.
And when he designed a house, and I'll get off the phone here, he designed a house for you. He would make the house specifically for your needs. he said each house is individual. We're all individual people. So when he made, and the houses were small.
Yes.
They weren't these huge monstrosities. But when you went into when I was out in, like I said, Arizona, to go in this house, I was totally blown away by all the different ideas he come up with for signs, for how just the whole thing blended together, where you felt just so alive in his houses, in his homes, and where he had a studio out in there, and he taught these people the Frank Lloyd Wright philosophy. And if I just was totally blown away by it. I'm going to have to go out to Falling Water and
yes,
see how
you
that
are.
works.
Yes, you are. Because I mean, that's a lot closer than Arizona, and Falling Water is considered his masterpiece.
Yeah, but like I said, if you learn more about the gentleman and himself and what he stood for, I was totally blown away by the guy.
Yeah.
So just, I mean, when you were just talking about architecture and how way people are living, and then you drive around, you see these homes, like, what the hell?
I know.
Whole neighborhood's like.
You know what? It's mostly just saying, "Hey, look how successful I am." Mine's bigger than yours,
well, of
right?
course.
That's
Exactly.
all it is.
I talked to my doctor, and I said to her, "What do you think about all these different things about monies?" And she said to me, "How many bathrooms can you stay in at one time?
I know.
How many rooms can you be in your house?"
I know. It's so true. It's so true. It's nuts. Thank
good,
you.
Lynn, talking to you.
Thank you. Good to
Bye-bye
talk
now.
to you, too. Yeah. No, you got to get out to Falling Water. Frank Lloyd Wright, because he was a little guy, I tend to get a little claustrophobic in the houses he built because the ceilings seem too low to me. I feel like I have to duck. I feel like I'm about to crash into something. And he was small. When I lived on a pig farm, which I did when I was newly married, we lived up the road from his first Taliesin, which is in Spring Green, Wisconsin, and that's near where my farm was. And the buildings there too. I mean, but integral to the surrounding environment. Yeah, no, I back in the day when I was a babe, sometimes you'd walk across the street and some jerk in his car who was stopped there would like vroom vroom his, his car engine. And I remember thinking, geez, I wouldn't advertise that you got a small little penis, you nitwit. I mean, to me, it's just like it's such ridiculous behavior. And I'm thinking that when people live in these ridiculous houses, that it's the same kind of thing, that they're advertising. They think they're advertising their wealth and their stature. And I think what you're telling me is you're extraordinarily insecure. And you're status conscious, which is a negative to me. And you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, which is a negative to me. And you want yours to be bigger than his, which is a real negative to me. And I'm sure they're thinking, oh, look at this. But it is bizarre that as our nuclear families get smaller, as households become smaller, the number of people living in each domicile, the domiciles have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And if anything sort of points out the fault of Americans of taking more than our share, of taking more than we need, that's a nice little metaphor, the houses. That's a good little metaphor. Chuck writes this about Republicans. He says a couple comments, Lynn. I was saying to my father of 87 years last night that it is likely that George W. Bush may well be our last Republican president. With demographics changing as they are, the only way they can elect another Republican president is to change the rules, which they are very hard at work trying to do. People need to be vigilant of the voter law changes that are taking place right now. That's absolutely right. They can't win anymore, so they're trying to change the playing field. They're trying to keep people from voting. And if you think that these voter registration laws are anything else, you're extraordinarily naive and or delusional. And Chuck continues to write, it seems such a contradiction that the Republican Party is often considered to be the more religious of the two parties. There is a strong vein of bigotry that runs through the Republican Party. It is so transparent. From their assaults on this president and their attempts to suppress minority voters, that they want this country to be the country of rich white men. Well, it has been the country of rich white men. They had it. Why wouldn't they continue to want it? Why have they stood in the way of everything that would have changed that? From every civil rights movement that has ever existed. Rich white men never needed a civil rights movement. But women did. And blacks did. And gays did, and poor people do, and immigrants do. And those are all these demographics that the rich white guy party wanted desperately to keep under control. All the better for them. And if you look at the power structure, even today, it still is overwhelmingly rich white men. Or at the very least, white men. There was a picture in the local paper today. I can't remember. They were a bunch of local yokels there to unveil something or cut a ribbon or who knows what. And they were standing for the Pledge of Allegiance or the Star Spangled Banner. I don't know what they were. The picture was taken. And there they were. It was this long line. I mean, this is Western Pennsylvania. White men. All office holders, from Senator Casey to Congressman Murphy to Congressman Doyle to Congressman Rothfuss to state senator and state rep this, and it was one white guy after another. I know this area is starting to wake up and move forward, but we're still so backward in so many ways. We're still, and it is true, 15, 20 years behind a lot of social movement. We're always bringing up the rear because this is not a progressive area in that regard. It's a very paternalistic, male-dominated and white-dominated region. And it's certainly not true of a lot of other places. So that's something that definitely is still to be remedied. And it will be simply by time. But I just wanted to point out that time's on our side, and we are winning all these battles. We're winning them. And the Republicans, in this last thrashing, convulsive, crazed effort to stop reality, which they can't handle, which is why they've created an entire universe that bears little resemblance to reality that they live in. And they talk to each other in. And they have a completely different narrative for what's happening in this world. You're seeing like this spasm of, it's almost like a death rattle. And it's scary when something big dies. And they're thrashing around. People get hurt. And they're right now, I mean, it sometimes seems to me like they're going to take all of us down with them. And that's why they've stopped the functioning of our government in large part, of our Congress. And trying to do so in many state legislatures. And well, the phrase losing it really works on a lot of levels. when we're talking about what's happening to what used to be the grand old party. The only part of that works anymore is old. Old and dying and not doing it gracefully. Well, that's that. And now we march on to celebrate labor. The worker. Okay? Have a great Labor Day weekend. Take time to think about what it's about. Because what really built this country is not the rich white guys. It was the poor, white, black, brown, and yellow men and women. That's who built and builds the country. There is no doubt about that. Have a great one. We'll be back on Tuesday because we do not labor on Labor Day. And I just want to say this before we go. Hey, buckos, come on, suck it up, get it together. This is sort of a big series starting almost now, okay? Come on! Don't get wobbly on us. Bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.